My fiance's ex showed up at my engagement party. My engagement dress still zipped up perfect, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold my phone. Because 30 minutes earlier, a woman named Vanessa, a woman I had never met in my life, walked into my engagement party like she owned the room. And when I asked my fiance, Derek, who she was, he looked at me like I'd just asked him to solve a math equation. Blank. Too blank. So I did what any woman would do. I followed her to the coat check, and when her clutch fell open on the table, I saw a phone. Not hers. His. His backup phone. The one he told me he lost 6 months ago. I want you to understand something before I go any further. I am not a jealous woman. I am not the kind of person who snoops. I trusted Derek with everything, my whole life, my future, my mother's ring finger measurements, for God's sakes. But when I opened that phone, in a bathroom at my own engagement party with 200 guests laughing outside that door, I found 412 text messages between my fiancé and the woman he introduced to our guests 20 minutes ago as an old coworker. And the last message sent that morning said this: "Tonight's just for show, baby. You know who I'm really marrying." I locked that bathroom door and I did not cry. Not yet, because in that moment, something in me went very, very quiet and very, very cold. This is the story of how I found out the man I was about to marry had been living a double life for over a year, and how I spent the next 6 weeks building the most satisfying, ironclad, legally bulletproof exposure of my life. Stick with me to the end, because what happens at that reception hall is going to make you scream at your screen. Let's start from the beginning. Hey everyone, welcome back. If this is your first time here, I tell real stories. My story, in this case, about betrayal, and about what happens when you stop reacting and start planning. Before we go further, if you've ever been lied to by someone you trusted completely, hit that subscribe button right now, because trust me, this story only gets crazier from here. There's a moment about halfway through involving his mother, a storage unit, and a voicemail that is going to make your jaw hit the floor. This gets so much worse before it gets better, but it gets so much better. Okay, let's go back to the beginning, to the version of me who still believed Derek was one of the good ones. My name's Maddie. I'm 31 years old. I work as a project coordinator for a mid-size architecture firm, and 3 years ago I met Derek at a mutual friend's barbecue. He was easy to talk to, funny in that dry, understated way. He remembered small details, my coffee order, the name of my childhood dog, the fact that I hated cilantro. Little things, the kind of things that make you think this one pays attention. For the first year, it was genuinely wonderful. He'd surprise me with my favorite takeout after a bad day at work. He met my parents and charmed my dad by helping him fix a leaky faucet without being asked. My mom used to call him the keeper before we'd been dating 6 months. I want to be honest with you, because hindsight has a cruel way of turning warm memories into evidence. Looking back now, there were things, small things I explained away because I loved him, and because explaining things away is what you do when you're falling for someone. Here's the first one. Derek had a second phone. He called it his work phone, said his company issued it for client calls, kept it separate from personal stuff. I never thought twice about it. Lots of people have 2 phones. Here's the second one.
About 8 months into dating, Derek started going on guys' trips with a friend named Marcus a few times a year. I never met Marcus, not once in 3 years. Every time I asked to meet him, there was a reason it didn't work out. Marcus was busy. Marcus was out of town. Marcus wasn't really a meet the girlfriend kind of guy. And here's the third one, the one that in hindsight makes me feel a little sick. Derek would occasionally get a text late at night, glance at it and say, "Work emergency," then step outside to take a call. Always outside, always with the phone held slightly away from his body, like he was protecting it. At the time, I told myself he was a private person, that not everyone processes things out loud, that some men just need their own space, their own compartments. I want to say something directly to you, watching this. If you're in a relationship right now and something similar is happening, a second phone, a friend you've never met, calls that always
Happen outside, please don't do what I did. Don't explain it away just because the rest of the relationship feels good. The good parts are real, but so is the part you're ignoring. 2 years in, Derek proposed. It was on a hike we used to take every fall at the Overlook where we had our first real conversation about the future. He got down on one knee, hands shaking, and said all the right things. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. My mom cried, my sister, Jenna, cried harder. It felt like the beginning of everything I'd wanted. We started planning the wedding almost immediately. Derek was oddly hands-off about most of the details. Venue, flowers, guest list, all of it fell to me and Jenna. But there was one thing he insisted on controlling personally, the guest list for his side of the family and his work friends. He said it was because his industry was small and reputations mattered. I didn't question it. Looking back, I should have. Here's where it starts getting uncomfortable. About 4 months before the engagement party, I was cleaning out Derek's car and found a receipt from a jewelry store, not the one where he bought my ring, a different one in a different city, dated 3 weeks after our engagement, $640. I asked him about it. He said it was a birthday gift for his mother and that he'd picked it up while visiting a client nearby. I believed him, because why wouldn't I? His mother's birthday actually was around that time. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out until much, much later, is that Derek's mother never received a gift that year at all. Around that same time, Derek started being more particular about who got invited to the engagement party. He specifically asked me not to invite 2 of my closest work friends because he said they'd make things awkward with his colleagues, which struck me as odd but not alarming. He also mentioned, almost too casually, that a woman from his old job named Vanessa might swing by the party because she was in town for work and they'd stayed friendly. I remember saying, "Wait, who's Vanessa?" And he said, "Oh, just someone from my old company. You'll like her." And that was it. That was the entire conversation. No context, no backstory, just a name dropped into a sentence like it was nothing. If you've made it this far, remember that name, Vanessa, because in about 12 minutes, that name is going to blow my entire life apart. The weeks leading up to the engagement party were, on the surface, some of the happiest of my life. We picked out my dress together. Derek helped me address 200 invitations by hand, complaining the whole time in a way that made me laugh. We danced in our kitchen to bad 2000s pop songs while making dinner. I remember thinking so clearly, I am the luckiest woman alive.
But underneath all of it, there was a low hum of things not adding up. A late-night phone call he took in the garage, a hotel loyalty points statement I found in his email that showed a stay in a city he told me he never visited, a weird tension in his shoulders every time his phone buzzed at dinner. I chose warmth over doubt every single time. I chose him. The night of the engagement party, I remember getting ready in front of the mirror, my sister zipping up my dress, both of us laughing about how my mascara was already running from happy tears. I felt in that exact moment completely and totally safe. That feeling lasted almost exactly 90 minutes. The party was at a private event space downtown that overlooked the river. String lights, a jazz trio, about 200 people from both sides of our lives. My parents, Derek's parents, old college friends, coworkers. It was everything I'd pictured since I was a little girl. About 45 minutes in, a woman walked in wearing a deep green dress, hair perfectly styled, moving through the crowd like she'd been to 100 parties exactly like this one. I didn't recognize her. I assumed she was someone's plus one. Then I watched Derek's face when he saw her. It wasn't surprise. It wasn't the polite half-smile you give an unexpected guest. It was panic. Pure, unfiltered panic, there and gone in less than a second, replaced by a forced smile so fast I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. He walked over to her immediately, before he greeted his own uncle, before he checked on his mother, and I watched them have a conversation that was clearly not their first. Body language close, voices low, her hand briefly on his forearm. I walked over and asked, as casually as I could manage, "Who's your friend?" Derek introduced her as Vanessa. "Old coworker," he said. "She was in town. I mentioned it might be nice if she stopped by." Vanessa smiled at me, a smile that, in hindsight, was not a friendly smile at all. It was the smile of someone sizing up competition she'd already decided she'd won. "Congratulations. You two make such a cute couple." Something about the way she said cute made my stomach drop. Not jealousy, instinct.
I want to pause here because I know some of you are yelling at your screen already. Check the phone, Maddie, check the phone. And don't worry, we're getting there. But I need you to understand what it feels like in the moment before you know anything, when your body knows something is wrong before your brain has caught up. I excused myself and went to find my sister, Jenna, who'd been mingling near the bar. I grabbed her arm and said, "Something's wrong. That woman, Vanessa. Watch how Derek acts around her." Jenna, God bless her, spent the next 20 minutes doing exactly that, while I tried to keep smiling for photos with people I'd known my whole life. At one point, I saw Vanessa head toward the coat check to drop off her wrap. I don't know what made me follow her, some instinct, some part of me that already knew, but I did. Her clutch was sitting open on the coat check counter while she adjusted her dress in the mirror, and sitting right on top, half out of the bag, was a phone, black case, a small crack in the corner. I would have recognized that crack anywhere because I'd bought Derek that exact phone case myself 8 months ago as a joke gift after he dropped his old one in a lake. His lost work phone in her purse. My hands were shaking, but I picked it up. It wasn't locked. Of course it wasn't. He never expected anyone to find it, especially not in someone else's bag at his own engagement party. I opened the messages. 412 texts between the two of them, dating back 14 months, 2 months before Derek even proposed to me. I'm not going to read you every message because, honestly, some of it isn't fit to say out loud, but I'll tell you the ones that mattered. There was a message from 3 weeks after our engagement where Derek told Vanessa, "Don't worry, this doesn't change anything between us. I have to do this for my family. You know that." My family, not our future. His family's expectations of a wedding, a wife, a story that looked good on paper. There was a message about the jewelry store receipt, the gift for his mother. Vanessa had written, "Loved the necklace, baby. You always know exactly what I like." $640 spent on another woman 4 months into our engagement. And there was the message from that very morning, the one I told you about at the start. "Tonight's just for show, baby. You know who I'm really marrying." I stood there in that hallway, holding his secret phone, wearing my engagement dress, while 200 people celebrated a relationship that had apparently been a performance for over a year. I want to be honest, my first instinct was to walk back into that party and scream, to flip a table, to throw that ring at his face in front of everyone, to let every single person in that room see exactly who Derek really was. And honestly, he would have deserved every second of that humiliation. But something stopped me. A colder, quieter voice in the back of my head that said, if you explode right now, you lose control of the story. If you wait, you control everything. So I did something that, looking back, I'm genuinely proud of. I locked that phone in my clutch, walked back into the party with a smile plastered on my face, found my mother and quietly told her I wasn't feeling well and needed her to help me slip out the back without a scene. She didn't ask questions. Mothers rarely need to. I hugged Derek bye at the end of the night. I told him I loved him. I let him kiss my cheek, and every word out of my mouth felt like ash, but I said them anyway, because I needed one more night of him thinking he'd gotten away with it. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my sister, my best friend, Alicia, and a legal pad, and I wrote down every single thing I knew, every date, every message, every red flag I'd explained away for 3 years. And somewhere in that process, something shifted in me. I stopped being a woman who'd been humiliated, and I started being a woman with a plan. But what happened next in that plan, I never saw it coming, and neither did Derek, because the deeper we dug, the more we realized this wasn't just an affair, it was a system, a carefully built double life, funded partially by money that belonged to both of us. And that changes everything about how this story ends. I need to say this clearly before I go further, because I know some of you are already imagining slashed tires or screaming voicemails, and that is not what this story is. What I wanted wasn't revenge in the messy, illegal, burn-it-all-down sense. What I wanted was the truth in front of the people who mattered, with evidence so undeniable that Derek couldn't smile his way out of it. I wanted consequences that stuck. That's it. So the morning after the party, Alicia, Jenna, and I sat down and made 3 lists: what I knew, what I needed to confirm, and who could help me. The first thing I did, before anything emotional, before any confrontation, was protect myself financially. Derek and I had a joint account we used for wedding expenses and a shared credit card for household bills. I quietly called the bank, explained I needed to separate finances ahead of a personal matter, and moved my portion of our joint savings into an account in my name only. Nothing dramatic, nothing illegal, just protecting what was mine before things got messy. I also pulled our joint credit card statements going back 18 months. That's when I found the pattern. Hotel charges in a city 2 hours away, roughly once a month, always on weekends. I remember Derek telling me he was on a guy's trip with the elusive, never-met Marcus. A florist charge for $85 that I never received flowers for. A restaurant charge for a tasting menu the same week he told me he was working late on a client emergency. I want to pause here because I know some of you are already yelling, "Leave him, girl, right now." And trust me, I understand that instinct completely. But leaving quietly would have let Derek control the narrative. He would have told his family I got cold feet, or that I was unstable or difficult. I knew him well enough to know exactly how he'd spin it. I needed the truth to be undeniable in a way no one could argue with, including his own mother. So here's what I did next. Step 1. I consulted a family law attorney, not to file anything yet, just to understand my rights since we'd started combining some finances for the wedding and had a joint lease application in progress for a house we planned to buy together. She confirmed that legally I was on solid ground to pull out of both the lease application and any shared financial commitments immediately, and she helped me draft a clean, simple letter voiding my portion of both, effective immediately, protecting my credit and my name.
Step 2, I asked Jenna, who works in digital forensics for an insurance company, to help me organize the messages from that phone, the credit card statements, and hotel records into a single, clean, chronological timeline. Dates, screenshots, receipts, everything labeled and backed up in 3 separate places. Not to post it online, not for revenge theater, but because I knew deep down that at some point Derek was going to lie to me to my face about all of it, and I wanted to be the one holding the truth when he did. Step 3, and this is the part that really turned things. I reached out to Vanessa. Not to fight her, not to scream at her. I called her, calm as anything, and said, "I found the phone. I know everything. I'm not calling to yell at you. I'm calling because I think you deserve something Derek never told you." There was a long silence. Then I told her about the jewelry receipt, about the "this doesn't change anything, I have to do this for my family" message, about the fact that Derek had proposed to me 2 months after their relationship by her own timeline had already started.
And then I told her the part that changed everything. While I was digging through his old email for the hotel records, I'd found a third thread, a different woman entirely. A coworker named Priya at his current job, with her own set of messages going back 8 months. Messages that made it clear Derek had told Priya almost the exact same thing he'd told Vanessa. "This doesn't change anything. I have to do this for my family." Derek wasn't just cheating on me with Vanessa, he was running the same script on at least 2 women, possibly more, all while planning a wedding with me as the real relationship everyone was supposed to believe in. Vanessa went quiet on the phone for almost 30 seconds. Then she said something I didn't expect. "He told me I was the only one who really knew him, that you two were basically just roommates who happened to be engaged." That's when I knew, really knew, that Vanessa wasn't some scheming villain twirling a mustache. She'd been lied to just as thoroughly as I had, just with a different set of lies. This is the first yes moment I promised you at the start, because here's what happened next. Instead of turning Vanessa and me against each other, which is exactly what Derek's whole double life depended on, she agreed to help me. Not out of revenge, but because, in her words, he made a fool out of both of us, and I'm done being someone's backup plan. Together, we tracked down Priya through Derek's old company directory and a mutual LinkedIn connection. When I reached out to her, gently, with just enough detail to prove I wasn't crazy or vindictive, she broke down within minutes. Derek had told her almost word for word what he'd told Vanessa, that our engagement was a formality for his family, that the real relationship was with her. 3 women, 1 script, 1 very, very cold and calculated liar. Now, here's where the plan really came together. Derek's parents were hosting a family dinner in 3 weeks to formally welcome me into the family and finalize wedding logistics. His mother's idea, a big sit-down dinner with his parents, his 2 sisters, his grandmother, and a handful of close family friends. Derek had spent weeks talking about how important this dinner was to him, how much his family's approval mattered. I decided that dinner was exactly where the truth needed to come out, not in a shouting match, not through an anonymous social media post, but calmly, with documentation, in front of the people whose respect Derek clearly valued more than honesty with me. Vanessa and Priya both agreed to be there, quietly, separately invited by me, seated at that table before Derek even knew what was happening.
The 3 weeks leading up to that dinner were honestly some of the strangest of my life. I still lived with Derek, I still slept in the same bed, I still let him believe everything was fine because I needed him relaxed, unsuspecting, and fully present at that table when the truth came out. There were nights I almost broke, nights I wanted to scream the truth at him across the dinner table just to end the waiting. But I kept telling myself, one dinner, one calm, documented, undeniable dinner, and then it's over. The night before the dinner, I packed a single bag and left it quietly in my car. My lease letter was ready, my finances were separated, my timeline was printed, organized, and backed up in 3 places. Jenna and Alicia both knew exactly where I'd be and exactly what time to check in. Derek had no idea any of this was happening. He thought he was walking into a dinner to celebrate his engagement. He had absolutely no idea what and who was waiting for him at that table. The dinner was at Derek's parents' house, the same dining room where I'd had Thanksgiving with his family the year before, the same table where his mother had once told me she was so happy Derek had finally found someone real. I arrived early, as planned, and helped his mother set the table like everything was completely normal. Derek's sisters teased him about being nervous. His grandmother asked about the wedding date. Derek sat at the head of the table, relaxed, confident, completely unaware that 2 women from his double life were about to walk through his parents' front door. Vanessa arrived first, introduced by me, calmly, warmly, as someone I think you should all meet. I watched the exact same panic flash across Derek's face that I'd seen at our engagement party, except this time there was nowhere to redirect it, no coat check to distract from, no crowd to hide in, just a dinner table full of his family, watching his face very, very closely. Then Priya arrived, and I watched Derek's face go from panic to something closer to full-body collapse. His mother, to her credit, immediately sensed something was wrong. "Derek," she said slowly, "who are these women?" And this is the part I want you to really sit with, because it's the moment everything changed. I stood up, calm as I'd ever been in my life, and I said, "I think Derek should answer that, but in case he needs help remembering, I brought some notes."
I placed the printed timeline on the table. 14 months of messages, hotel receipts, the jewelry store charge for Vanessa's necklace on the same week Derek told me it was a gift for his mother, his actual mother, sitting 3 feet away, hearing for the first time that a gift she never received had been billed in her honor to another woman. Priya's messages, nearly identical in language to Vanessa's, both containing the phrase, "I have to do this for my family." Derek tried to talk over it. He tried the classic lines. "This isn't what it looks like. You're twisting things. Can we talk about this privately?" But with 2 women he'd told the exact same lies to sitting at that table, holding their own phones with their own screenshots, there was no version of privately that was going to save him. Here's the moment I know you've been waiting for. The first real yes moment. Derek's grandmother, 83 years old, silver-haired, who had said maybe 10 words all dinner, calmly folded her napkin, looked her grandson dead in the eye, and said, "I raised your father better than this, and I expected you to be better than your father." Then she stood up and left the table. I watched Derek's face crumble in a way I had genuinely never seen in 3 years of dating him. His mother didn't scream. She didn't cry, not right away. She looked at the timeline, looked at Vanessa, looked at Priya, looked at her son, and said, quietly, "I think you owe every woman at this table an explanation, starting with your fiancé." Derek had nothing. For the first time in 14 months of running the exact same manipulative script on multiple women, he had absolutely nothing to say. Here's the twist I promised you, and it's the part that still gets me. While all of this was unfolding, Derek's youngest sister quietly excused herself from the table. She came back 4 minutes later and said, "I just talked to Marcus," the mysterious best friend, the guys trips guy I'd never once met in 3 years. Marcus wasn't real.
Or rather, Marcus was real, but it was Derek's actual college roommate who Derek's sister had run into at a coffee shop that same week and mentioned the wedding to. Marcus had no idea what guys' trips his sister was referring to because there had never been any guys' trips. Every single one of those weekends, the hotel charges, the guys' trip with Marcus, had been spent with Vanessa, and at least twice, based on overlapping dates Priya recognized, with Priya. The lie wasn't just an affair, it was an entire architecture of fake friendships, fake work trips, fake gifts, built over more than a year, funded partially with money from an account that had my name on it, too.
The second yes moment came about 10 minutes later. Derek's father, a quiet, reserved man I'd maybe heard say 20 full sentences in 3 years, stood up, walked to the head of the table where Derek was still stammering excuses, and said one sentence: "Give her back the ring and get out of my house until you can explain yourself like a man." Not a scene, not a shouting match, just quiet, absolute, undeniable disappointment from the one person Derek had always seemed desperate to impress. I took the ring off, right there at the table, and set it down gently in front of Derek. Not thrown, not dramatic, just done. I hope Vanessa or Priya or whoever comes next gets the honest version of you, I said, because I never did. Then I picked up my folder of evidence, thanked his mother for the years of kindness she'd shown me, hugged his grandmother goodbye at the door, and walked out to my car where my bag had been packed and waiting for exactly this moment for 3 weeks. The third yes moment came about 2 weeks later, and this one had nothing to do with me directly. Derek worked at a mid-size consulting firm, and Priya, it turned out, was not just any coworker. She was on the same internal team as Derek, and their company had a strict policy against undisclosed relationships between team members, especially ones involving deception and shared travel expenses billed to client accounts. When HR found out, not from me, I want to be clear, I never contacted his employer. Through Priya's own decision to report the situation for her own protection, Derek was placed under investigation for misusing travel reimbursements to fund what the company delicately called personal travel inconsistent with reported business purposes. He was let go within the month. As for the finances, because I know some of you are wondering, my attorney helped me formalize everything cleanly. My portion of the shared savings had already been separated before the confrontation. The joint lease application was voided with no penalty to my credit, since I'd withdrawn before signing anything binding. Derek was left to explain to a landlord, alone, why his fiancée's name had suddenly disappeared from a lease he'd told them was for my future wife and me. Vanessa and Priya, for what it's worth, never spoke to Derek again after that dinner. The three of us, strange as it sounds, actually stayed loosely in touch for a while afterward. Not close friends, but something like allies who'd survived the same storm. Vanessa sent me a message a few weeks later that just said, "Thank you for telling me the truth even though you didn't have to." That message meant more to me than I expected it to. But what happened next, I genuinely never saw coming. About 2 months after everything fell apart, Derek's mother called me. Not Derek, his mother. She apologized on behalf of her family for the years I'd spent being lied to under her roof, and she told me something I'll never forget. "You handled that dinner with more grace than he deserved. I want you to know, whatever happens next in your life, you're welcome at my table, not as his fiancé, but as someone I respect." I still get emotional thinking about that phone call. Looking back now, almost a year later, here's what I've learned. The version of me who found that phone in a bathroom, shaking, humiliated, wanted to burn everything down in one loud, messy night, and honestly, she would have been justified. But the version of me who waited 3 weeks, who built a timeline instead of a tantrum, who let the truth do the talking instead of my anger, she's the one who actually got her life back. Calm isn't weakness.
Documentation isn't cowardice. Sometimes the coldest, most controlled response is the one that actually protects you legally, financially, and emotionally, long after the satisfaction of a single dramatic moment fades. I'm engaged again now, actually, to someone completely different, someone who has never once made me feel like I needed to check a coat check or a credit card statement to know the truth. And I think that's really the point of this whole story. It's not really about Derek or Vanessa or Priya or any of it. It's about learning to trust the quiet, uncomfortable feeling in your gut before it becomes 412 text messages you have to read in a bathroom stall. If you've ever lived through something like this, I want to hear it. Comment below and tell me, what would you have done differently? Would you have exposed him right there at the party, or would you have waited, like I did, to build the airtight case? If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe, because there are so many more stories like this one coming, and trust me, some of them get even wilder than this. Thank you for staying with me through this whole thing. I'll see you in the next one.